So we're going to move on to our second presenter this evening. I am introducing Lauren Castro. So Lauren is a student at University of Oregon, and their research is focused on geological mapping of the Cascades-Issue National Monument. And this research is also being advised by Dr. Jad D'Allura.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Lauren Castro. I am a senior at the University of Oregon, and I will be graduating in the spring, which is super exciting. And yeah, I was able to get the Friends Scholarship last year, and so I did my research all last summer, which was an amazing experience with Dr. Jad D'Allura. And I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see what I've got going on. Okay, does that look decent for everyone? Okay, also I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, so if it gets spotty, please someone yell at me to stop and I'll try and fix it. Okay, so this is a picture from not the top of Grizzly Peak, but the top of the Grizzly Peak Trail. And this is overlooking Ashland. It is a beautiful view. Honestly, just spectacular. You can't really see how steep it is from here, but God, is it steep, but you know, absolutely gorgeous. If I can click, oh, there you go. So I have a presentation outline. So first I kind of want to walk you guys through my project focus and then where it kind of all happened, because we were able to do 2 areas. And then I want to dive right into those research areas, the mapping that we did, the thin sections that we were able to make from all the samples, and then just kind of like some ideas that we had about it. And then I have the data collection, which is just like the techniques and the tools that we used to be able to map the whole area. And then just our conclusion. We were able to do some geochemistry, which I won't dive too deeply into. Then we also have some of our final maps, as well as some interpretations for what our research kind of led to. So first, this is the whole monument, and we have this area right here, which is the Little Hyatt Reservoir area that we were able to go in and map. And then over here in the quarter is the Grizzly Peak area. So the Little Hyatt Reservoir objective that we had was that we wanted to go through and kind of double check the mapping that was already done, and just to follow the contacts and see what actually was going on in a little bit more detail. In the area, there's quite a bit of landslides that cover most of the tuff, which is difficult for when you're trying to decide where this is all coming from. But we wanted to see how intact all of these contacts were and how much weathering was occurring, because when you have tuff like this, ashfall, it is it's not super lithified in the sense that it erodes a lot quicker, so it doesn't last very long. And then here is a picture of me standing in a canal, and this is the SW2 outcrop, which is one of the units that we were tracking, which is our slightly welded tuff. And then here, I tried to put in some Google Earth pictures, because when you're looking at topographic maps, you don't really get to see the beauty of it as well as much of the topography that you want. So this is the actual reservoir, and then this is where this picture was taken, and we mapped all the way over here. And this is actually the Pacific Crest Trail, goes through there, which is really interesting. So this is a LiDAR image, which is remote sensing that we used to kind of help us have an idea of what we were looking at before we went in and hiked. And here we have the 2 units that we were focused on. And so our slightly welded tuff, it is from a volcanic ash deposit from an eruption. And over time, after it flows out, it's going to start to lithify. And we call it slightly welded because the residual heat that is compacting with the ashfall will lithify it into a rock. And so then you'll have like a solid unit, but it's only partially welded, because when you have a welded tuff, you have lapilli and pumice fragments from the actual eruption that will compress into flame-like structures, and I'll show that later. But yeah, we have this right here, welded tuff, and then the slightly welded tuff. And then we actually have a slightly welded tuff 1 unit that also kind of goes through here, but it's a lot thinner. And so this is the road that I showed in the Google Earth picture. Goes up like this, and then here's the reservoir right here. And then also right over here, we have a dike, which is really interesting. And so the canal that we were in was kind of like over here. Okay. And so when we were hiking throughout the Little Hyatt, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The Little Hyatt Reservoir, we were basically just going through, picking up rock samples and trying to figure out if they were all from the same unit. And so we hiked northward from that LiDAR picture that I showed until we got to the very top of the formation. And this is actually an image from the top of that formation. Absolutely gorgeous, wonderful place to have lunch. And back here, we actually have Mount Ashland, which is super cool. And I don't actually have a picture of the rock sample that this thin section is from, but this is an example of the tuff that we were able to look at. And when you're looking at tuff in a thin section, basically what you want to look at is the ground mass. So back here, this matrix, it's all consisted of volcanic glass. So it's just vitrified rock, which means that we're just heating it up so much that it's just turning into volcanic glass. And you can see how speckled it is and gorgeous and cross-polarized light. Got some feldspars in there. But a lot of the tuff that we were looking at, a lot of the feldspars are going to weather out to clay. So we didn't get to see a whole bunch of that in some of the SW2 units that we were looking at. And then here is an example of the welded tuff. And this is a picture of a hunk that we were able to grab. And as you can see, these are all the pieces of pumice that we were able to see that were welded into fiamme, which is a flame-like structure. And I don't actually have a plane polarized light of this, but this is just a zoomed in picture of this, where you can see all of the obsidian encrusting around the fiamme, which is just absolutely amazing. And then over here, this is cross polarized light, and it's just of the fiamme. It is just spectacular. And then we get into the Grizzly Peak unit. This place is the perfect example of stay on the trail. Don't go off the trail. It is very, very steep country, super dangerous, but it is just so wonderful when you get in there. And the Google Earth pictures that you get they look super green and lush, and it's just not like that anymore. We had a fire go through there and it just decimated a lot of the area. So you have all of these burnt and just crusty trees. But for this unit, we were just looking at the breccias that were formed along the edge of the ridge, and we were mapping the northwest corner of the monument. And so we have a couple different flows that came through here. We have like a platy lava. We have actually another ashfall unit that came through as a debris slide, landslide. And then we also have some flows, which is really cool, but can't really see how steep it is. But this is on the ridge. We didn't walk quite up there, but we walked all the way around here on the other side. We weren't able to find all of the roads that we saw on LiDAR originally, just because of landslides and overgrowth of brush. So we were originally going to drive up the BLM road and then park and then hike through, but we weren't able to. So we ended up just hiking the entire Grizzly Peak Trail every time it came up, which you can see right here. This is the loop of the Grizzly Peak Trail. And then that drops down. and overlooks like this cool drainage area. And then you have the breccias on the side, as well as a ridge where it goes up to another peak. And so here is more LiDAR, and these are all dikes here, which is just a magma intrusion. And then we also have the ashfall unit that I was talking about earlier, another tuff unit, but they're all in form of landslide. And you can kind of tell by the topography that it's all kind of going downwards. And then, oh no, sorry. And then we have pictures of the different flows. So this is an flow, which when I took intro geology, they were like, oh, you'll never see this. You only see this in Hawaii. So I was like, this is so cool. I get to see it right in my own backyard, which is really great. And this forms just by lava that's starting to cool, and it gets super blocky. And it looks chunky as it flows out, which is really cool. And then over here we have the Breccia Cliffs. This is about where I cried the first time. It is so steep, and being a geologist that is scared of heights doesn't mix well. But Jad stayed strong and drug me up it. But it is just absolutely spectacular. It doesn't do it justice. It's a little zoomed out. But here are the other flows I was talking about. This is the platy lava. And essentially it was just a really, really slow flow. And as it starts to cool, the magma or the lava is all trying to cool in different directions. And so you have the orientation of the cooling lava just kind of stretch out. And as it cools, it just breaks up into plates, which is really awesome. And this picture is actually in a quarry that we were able to find. And we took a couple samples here also. But to get up here, you had to go through the road that we originally went to. And then over here, we have our breccia. And this is what a majority of the cliffs are made of. But the platy lava and the flow are also all related to the breccia. It's all pretty much the same composition, so it's relatively close. But here we have a super chunky flow, highly viscous. It's like slow moving honey. And as it starts to cool, you have giant blocks of rock mixed with a bunch of different matrix. You can have cobble-sized stones in there. You can get little pebbles. It's just a huge hodgepodge of just different rock. And in this picture, you can see all the red alteration that we got going on the breccia, and it's just oxidizing. And then I have some thin section images of this. So this is the platy lava that we were able to pick up from the quarry. We had a bunch of different samples, but we decided that these were probably going to be the best to go with. This is plain polarized light. We've got some plagioclase, we've got some pyroxenes. And then over here, this is our breccia, super fine matrix. And we also have plage, some augite, and yeah, you can see how fine grained it is. And these are some of the formations that we were able to find in the Grizzly Peak area. This is a spatter cone we were able to see on top of the east-west ridge. So as you drop down from the top of the trail, you just have like a pretty flat ridge. This was on top of it, and a spatter cone is essentially like a mini volcano. You just have a ton of gas built up in one area, and those gas bubbles just want to rise up. So you have the lava peeking up through the ground, and it just erupts into a little tiny volcano. And this is also red from oxidation, I believe. And then we have a hornito, which is a very similar type of structure as a spatter cone, but they're usually smaller. And this was actually on the other peak, on the other side of the ridge. So I want to go through some of the techniques that we used for mapping, as well as like taking samples and kind of what we did with the samples once we pulled them. I started out doing this project and I had no idea what I was doing. I had my intro geology classes and that was it. Like I hadn't taken mineralogy or petrology. I had no idea what I was doing. So Jad really had to push me through this and put in a lot of work trying to help me understand, which was great though, because I got to be a know-it-all in my mineralogy class in the fall, because I was like, oh yeah, I did this all summer. But yeah, it was wonderful. But here we have another picture of the LiDAR that we used for the Little Hyatt Reservoir. And we use LiDAR pretty heavily throughout this whole process because you're able to see the topography and also tiny roads. You can see cow trails, for example. We use that for the most of for the majority of the Grizzly Peak mapping area. Because there are no trails. So we really entrusted the cows to help us get through that area. And then we also had aerial photos. A lot of them were a little bit older, so we weren't able to see the ground as well in the Grizzly area because most of that had burned down. But prior, obviously, it was lush with a bunch of trees, and so that didn't help us much, and we really relied on the LiDAR. But the aerial photos for Little Hyatt Reservoir were extremely helpful. And then we also used topographic maps, and then this helps us figure out which areas are too steep for us to drop down, even if there is a cow trail. And this is a picture of the map that I was able to do for the Grizzly Peak area when I was just plotting my data points. And so this is the loop of the Grizzly Peak Trail, and then here is the ridge, and then this is the other peak on the other side. And so right in this area, we were able to see that the topography was way too steep. There was a cattle trail that was going through there, but there was no way that we would be able to get down it, much less climb back up. It would be like a rock climbing trip. So then from there, we were able to see, oh, we're going to have to go all the way around, which we did. And we pretty much went all the way down this way. This is about where I cried. And then we went around back and we were able to map the northeast section of this portion. We saw a bunch of cool stuff back here. We saw dikes, tons of cows. It was awesome. But to do this, to get a map like this, you basically are going to need a GPS. And you pull your GPS point, and then we used UTM plotting to put this on the map, which was really awesome. It was a great skill to learn. And then for, oh my God, I'm going through the whole thing. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to use PowerPoint apparently. For recording samples, basically you would crack open a rock, use our rock hammers, break open something that is outcropping, hold it up to the light, use your hand lens, and you're able to look and see what kind of minerals are in it. And so right off the bat, things we were looking for were plagioclase or quartz. Quartz specifically, it's more of a stable mineral, but plage was really nice because you can just hold it up to the light and it'll sparkle back at you. And that's how we were able to determine the crystal percentage in the field and make notes of where we were pulling these rocks. And so here's a crystal percentage chart. This became my best friend while we were looking at different rock samples, as well as using a color chart. So I have a booklet that was gifted to me by Jad, and basically it just has like a bunch of different colors as if you went to Lowe's and you were gonna paint your wall. And you just hold up your rock next to it and you're able to see what color it is. And that will help you later when you're trying to ID it. So that was super helpful. And then once you got all this information, you'd make a journal entry in your field notebook, say, this is where I got this at this time, and then pull your coordinates, and then you plot that on the map, which is really great. So then you can basically see where your units are, where it's cropping out, and how to map it. And then here are some of the concluding thoughts I have for the two sections that we did. We were able to do some geochemistry and kind of see what everything was when we pulled it. And so the Tort C unit, this is the part of the tuff that we're looking at that's underlaid by all this landslide stuff. That is rhyolite and dacite, and then our spatter cones were mafic and basaltic andesite. And the lava flows and breccia were silicic, basaltic andesite to mafic andesite. And then I just have like the layers listed of kind of what we thought, what the units were going to be underlain by. And so we have the tort, which is the coarse lapilli tuff, ashfall subunit, the platy lava, our breccia with our hornitos and our spatter cones. And then on top of that, we have the volcanic sandstone, debris flow breccia, lava, and some more silicic tuff. So quite the layer cake that we got going. And just to go over again, this is just a geologic map of the Grizzly Peak area. So this is the actual peak, and then we have the loop of actually loop over here of the trail, and then it goes down here on the ridge, and then this is the other side. And then for the Little Hyatt area, couple of concluding thoughts. SW2 and our W2 units definitely thicken the more north you go, as well as the degree of welding. There were a couple samples that we got from our welded tuff that were so severely welded that they were entirely obsidian, which I had never seen before, and it was outstanding. It was really great. And so as we were mapping this, as it got thicker to the north, you would think that from the peak of an eruption, you would think that it would be thicker towards where the eruption is occurring, because it's going to thin out the further it goes. And so that leads us to believe that these flows, these tuffs, are actually from the Eagle Butte silicic eruptive complex. And Hladky, another guy who went through and mapped this, he guessed this a while ago, but we just went through to double check. But there are a couple areas where we have so much landslide material that you kind of can't really tell. So there's a lot of educated guessing that goes on, because we have like this right here is just a huge landslide. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to, first of all, the Friends for giving me this opportunity. It was the perfect thing for me to do during the summer to prep me through mineralogy and petrology and even structure that I'm taking right now, as well as a good prep for field camp that I will be doing this summer. And also just a huge thank you to Jad for everything that he has taught me and walked me through, and I appreciate him helping me through this learning curve and helping me be the best geologist I can be.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was a wonderful, fun presentation. That was also fun to hear about the cow trails. Just a reminder, if anyone has any questions for Lauren, please put them in the chat. That was really fun to learn about. It seemed like a fun word to say, but now I'm forgetting it. Breccia?
Yes. It's great to look at.
That's fun. What was your favorite part of your research?
I actually, it's funny when you do field work, it's the most miserable time when you're doing it, but then after you're like, oh my God, that was so amazing. So I have to say Grizzly Peak was actually my favorite, even though I think I actually asked Jad to leave me to die on the mountain at one point. So, but it's amazing. I really recommend anyone who hasn't gone there, please hike Grizzly Peak Trail. It is wonderful.
That's funny. I have hiked Grizzly Peak, and I know there's some points where I have been close to crying.
Yeah.
Really steep. Any other questions for Lauren? Comments about the steepness of the Grizzly Peak Trail? Lauren, how do you feel like your research will support you in your future endeavors?
Just, I mean, future right now, this summer, just being able to read a topographic map and be able to use a GPS and know how to pull rock samples is going to be amazing. I already feel like I'm ahead of the game, you know, for field camp, which is going to be tough. But already having that experience with geologic mapping, I think that hopefully I'll be able to get an A. So we'll see.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time and your presentation. It was really wonderful. I know you have another event to get off to as well, so thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate it.